Welcome to colonial America, or as I like to call it, the world's least glamorous camping trip with taxes. Your eyes open to the sound of roosters, cows, and possibly your neighbor's child screaming because he got his foot stuck in a bucket again. The mattress under you is a wooden frame, covered with straw and mystery stains that have seen more action than the Boston Harbor. The smell of smoke lingers in the rafters, because chimneys were more like polite suggestions than actual air vents. And somewhere a rat scurries across the floor as if to remind you that personal space has not been invented yet. The sun is rising, and so are your chores. Your back aches, your teeth ache, your hair is greasy, and your future looks about as bright as a candle stub that has already been used to light 6 other candles. Welcome to another day of survival in colonial Sleepville. Breakfast is not eggs and bacon, sizzling on a skillet with coffee brewing in the background. Breakfast is bread that could legally qualify as a weapon, a cup of weak beer that doubles as hydration and anesthesia, and maybe some porridge so gray it looks like sadness scooped into a bowl. If you are lucky, someone remembered to scrape honey from a comb without swallowing too many bees. If not, you are just eating bland mush while staring at the fireplace, like it owes you money. Children slurp the same food while coughing dramatically because the family constitution has been shredded by last winter's influenza. And nobody is talking about vitamins because vitamins have not been invented yet. Breakfast is not joy, it is fuel. And it reminds you that your life is a mix of chewing fatigue and hoping not to choke on a stone fragment baked into your bread loaf. Once breakfast is over, you stumble outside, instantly regretting your choice to be alive. The streets are mud if it rained, dust if it did not, and manure either way. Pigs wander freely because fences are more like spiritual concepts than physical barriers. Chickens scatter underfoot, and someone's cow is blocking your path with the attitude of a bored traffic officer. The smell is overwhelming, a mix of sweat, rot, ale, wet wood, and something that may or may not be human. But you cannot stop to investigate because you have work, endless work, work that does not pay in money, but in the slight chance that your family will not starve to death before next Tuesday. You grip your wooden bucket, sigh, and start another day of lifting, hauling, chopping, or digging until your body remembers that it is a fragile bag of bones and starts falling apart one joint at a time. Clothing is a nightmare that you cannot wake from. Men wear wool that scratches like an angry porcupine. Women wear layers upon layers until they resemble poorly constructed pastries. Shoes are stiff leather slabs that have never heard the words comfort or support. And everything smells faintly of smoke, mold, and despair. Laundry day means dunking garments into a barrel of cold water, scrubbing until your knuckles bleed, and then hanging them to dry in a wind that ensures they will collect more dirt than they lost. Fashion is not about looking good. It is about surviving winter without freezing and surviving summer without fainting. Buttons fall off, laces tangle, hats blow away, and collars choke you just enough to remind you that life is suffering wrapped in fabric. Now let us talk about medicine, or more accurately, the exciting art of guessing which herb, bleeding, or leech might accidentally not kill you today. Doctors are rare and expensive, so most people rely on local healers, who recommend things like smearing honey on wounds, stuffing garlic in ears, or drinking boiled bark water with the confidence of someone who has absolutely no data to back it up. Fevers are treated with more blankets until you either sweat it out or suffocate. Broken bones are set with splints and prayers. Infections are met with shrugging. And childbirth is considered less of a medical procedure and more of a coin toss. If you survive sickness, you call it a blessing. If you do not, congratulations, you are another statistic in a graveyard that has more residents than the actual town. Toothache. Oh yes, the grand finale of misery. When your molar decides it hates you, the only cure is extraction by someone whose main qualification is a strong grip and poor eyesight. The tools are pliers, the anesthesia is ale, and the pain is biblical. Once the tooth is out, you are left with a hole, a bloody rag, and the chance of infection so high it feels like a dare from the universe. Some people wear their pulled teeth as charms. Others just spit them into the fire and keep chewing with whatever teeth remain. Smiles are rare, straight smiles are mythical, and bad breath is so universal it has become part of the culture. Romance in colonial Sleepville. begins with the shared understanding that nobody smells good and everybody is decaying at roughly the same pace. Religion rules the calendar like a micromanaging boss who will not let you breathe without permission. Church is mandatory, sermons are long, and the pews are hard enough to qualify as torture devices. You sing hymns with cracked voices. You listen to warnings about sin, and you are reminded that everything fun is probably a direct ticket to hell. Festivals are permitted, but only if they involve more fasting than feasting. Dancing is suspicious. Laughter is borderline criminal. And anything that looks like joy must be balanced with guilt. Religion in colonial Sleepville is not about comfort. It is about control, reminding you that God is watching. Your neighbors are watching. And probably rats are watching too. Food beyond breakfast is not a celebration either. Lunch is bread again, maybe cheese. Maybe soup if someone found vegetables that were not already rotting. Meat is rare unless you own animals, and even then most of the animal gets turned into stew. Dried fish is common and tastes like regret soaked in salt. Desserts are for the wealthy and usually made of sugar. So expensive it might as well be. Powdered gold. Fruit exists, but only seasonally, and usually rots before you can finish eating it. And everything is cooked over an open fire that smokes out the kitchen, burns half the meal, and fills the air with the aroma of charred disappointment. Every meal is beige, chewy, and a reminder that your body is not fueled by nutrients, but by stubbornness. Entertainment is scarce and usually involves watching other people suffer in creative ways. Public punishments are popular. Stocks in the town square hold misbehaving citizens, while children throw vegetables and adults throw insults. Executions draw crowds so large they feel like medieval football games. And gossip is the national sport. Storytelling by candlelight is a favorite pastime. But half the stories are about witches, devils, or people who froze to death last winter. Music exists, but instruments are expensive, so mostly you hear clapping, stomping, and singing that sounds like geese being chased. Fun is rationed like flour, and happiness is so rare it could be taxed. By nightfall you collapse on your straw mattress again, scratching at flea bites, coughing into the smoky air, and listening to your family snore in harmony with the rats under the floor. You dream of a world with comfort, soap, and maybe even indoor plumbing. But then you wake to the same reality, colonial Sleepville, where survival is the only game and losing is alarmingly easy. The night stretches long, filled with strange noises, creaking wood, and the knowledge that tomorrow will be the same as today, just colder, wetter, or hungrier. Sleep comes eventually, not as rest, but as temporary escape from a life that feels like one long endurance test for a prize that may not even exist. Morning chores are less of a to-do list and more of a survival obstacle course. Water must be hauled from a well that is both far away and suspiciously murky. Wood must be chopped even though your axe is duller than your cousin's wit. Livestock must be fed though they respond with blank stares and occasional kicks. Children must be wrangled into doing something other than throwing rocks at geese. And the entire time you are sweating through wool that feels like being hugged by a damp sheep. If you pause to rest, you are called lazy. If you push too hard, you collapse. Either way, work never ends because houses rot, roofs leak, fences collapse, and tools break at exactly the moment you need them most. The day has only just begun, and already you feel like you have lived 3 lives too many. Education in colonial Sleepville is a luxury wrapped in punishment. If you are wealthy, you send your child to school where they learn Latin, scripture, and handwriting that looks like spider tracks. If you are poor, your education is farming, hauling, and knowing which plants will kill you. The alphabet is taught with religious verses, numbers with tithes and taxes, and discipline with a rod so flexible it has its own personality. Boys are expected to grow into men with calloused hands and endless patience. Girls are expected to become wives with sturdy wombs and even sturdier bread recipes. Books are expensive, paper is precious, and ink is rationed like medicine. Reading is a privilege, writing is an achievement, and boredom is a constant companion, because there is nothing to do once the candles burn out, but stare into darkness and hope you do not hear whispers that are not your own. Housing in colonial Sleepville is the architectural equivalent of an apology. One-room cabins made of timber that creaks in the wind and leaks in the rain. Fireplaces smoke up the air instead of clearing it. And windows are covered in oiled cloth that lets in light, but not dignity. The floor is dirt, the furniture is crude, and privacy is a myth told by traveling merchants who enjoy lying for sport. Multiple families may share one space. Because building materials are scarce and winters are cruel, every corner is either damp, drafty, or both. Insects live in the rafters, mice in the walls, and sometimes entire cats appear uninvited. Comfort is not the goal, survival is. And the best compliment you can give a house is that it has not collapsed yet. Travel is not glamorous either. There are no smooth highways or cheerful roadside diners. There are mud paths that turn into rivers when it rains and dusty wastelands when it does not. Wagons creak like dying whales, horses stumble on rocks, and walking is the main method of transport for most. Every journey is a gamble with sprained ankles, broken wheels, or the delightful chance of being robbed by bandits who consider your moldy bread a worthwhile treasure. If you need to go somewhere far, you prepare for days. Pack food that tastes like sawdust, and still expect to lose something important along the way. Nights on the road means sleeping on the ground with insects, wolves, and your own regrets. Traveling in colonial Sleepville is less an adventure and more a slow crawl toward discomfort with extra splinters. The weather plays games with your soul. Summers are hot enough to boil your patience. Winters are cold enough to freeze your tears. Spring is a mud pit that swallows boots whole. And autumn is a short reminder that nature could be pleasant if it was not trying to kill you. There are no thermostats, no air conditioning, no cozy heaters. Only firewood that runs out faster than you can chop it. Droughts starve crops. Storms flatten roofs. Floods ruin fields. And snowstorms trap you indoors with nothing but coughs, fleas, and family arguments. Weather decides whether you live or die, and it never seems to like you very much. Politics in colonial Sleepville is a circus without the fun animals. Decisions are made by men in wigs, who argue endlessly about taxes, while the rest of the town just tries not to starve. Loyalty to the crown is demanded, even though the crown is across an ocean and would not recognize your face if it was carved into gold. Voting is not for everyone, only for men with land, which excludes most of the population. Laws change depending on who is shouting the loudest. Punishments are severe for minor crimes, and corruption is as common as mud. Government is less about serving people and more about reminding them that they will never matter. Power flows upward, suffering flows downward, and the average colonist just nods along while secretly counting how many spoons they can trade for a loaf of bread. Let us not forget leisure time, or rather the absence of it. When you are not working, you are repairing. When you are not repairing, you are preparing. And when you are not preparing, you are sleeping. If you want fun, you might carve wooden toys for children or tell stories by firelight. But mostly entertainment comes in the form of gossip. Watching chickens fight, or staring into the distance like a broken clock. Music exists, but instruments are rare. Dancing is frowned upon unless it is for a holiday. And laughter is suspicious unless followed by prayer. Leisure is not relaxation. It is the absence of immediate chores. And even then, someone will find you a new one. Food preservation is both an art and a horror show. Without refrigeration, everything must be salted, smoked, dried, or buried. Meat becomes tough enough to break teeth. Fish tastes like concentrated ocean misery. And vegetables shrivel into leathery excuses for nutrition. Barrels of pickled goods fill cellars, and each bite is a gamble. Between sour tang and food poisoning, flour grows weevils. Milk turns to cheese whether you want it to or not. And winter storage means living in fear that a rat army will invade your pantry. Every meal is a reminder that freshness is a fantasy. Flavor is accidental, and stomach cramps are a way of life. Workshops fill the town with the sound of hammering, sawing, and cursing. Blacksmiths hammer iron while sweat pours into their eyes. Coopers bend wood until their backs bend too. Carpenters lose fingers as casually as others lose buttons. And apprentices run errands while being shouted at. The air is thick with smoke, dust, and frustration. Trades are vital for survival, but rarely profitable. Tools are heavy, materials are scarce, and every mistake costs you time you do not have. Craftsmanship is respected, but not rewarded. Skill is admired, but still poorly paid. And every tradesman knows that one slip of the hand could end not just a project, but a livelihood. And finally, we must address pest control, or the lack thereof. Fleas ride every animal, including humans. Lice are so common that combing them out is a family activity. Rats thrive in barns, pantries, and even under blankets. Mosquitoes swarm in summer, and flies treat every meal like an open buffet. There are no sprays, no traps, only wishful thinking. Cats do their best, but spend half their time napping. Dogs chase shadows instead of vermin. And humans simply scratch, swat, and sigh. Disease spreads with every bite, every itch, every scratch. Yet life continues as if infestation is simply part of the human condition. In colonial Sleepville, pests are not invaders. They are roommates you never invited but cannot evict. The night grew heavier, and the old wooden door of the house kept creaking in the wind. Every creak felt like a warning whisper crawling inside his mind. He pressed his ear against the door, but all he could hear was silence. So deep it felt alive, the lantern in his hand flickered, as if even fire wanted to escape this place. His breath became shorter, and his chest felt tighter, as unseen eyes followed him in the dark. The air smelled of damp earth mixed with something rotten, like forgotten flesh. He forced himself to step forward, but the floor groaned like bones being cracked. Every sound echoed in the hollow halls, making him feel like he was not alone. A sudden cold rush brushed his shoulder like an icy hand pulling him back. He turned fast, but behind him was only the endless shadow stretching long. His heartbeat thundered louder than the wind outside. The silence of the house seemed like it was listening to him breathing. He whispered a prayer, but even his words vanished before reaching his lips. Something unseen was circling around him like a predator testing its prey. And he realized the house itself was alive, watching, waiting, and hungry. He climbed the staircase that twisted like a serpent covered in dust and cobwebs. Each step he took sank deeper, like the wood wanted to swallow him whole. The railing was cold and slimy as if it had been touched by something not human. Halfway up, he heard a faint giggle like a child playing in the shadows. His blood froze because he knew there were no children in this abandoned place. The laughter grew louder, then faded, as if mocking him with cruel playfulness. He called out in a shaking voice, demanding to know who was there. But only the echo of his own voice returned, twisted and distorted like another man speaking. He reached the top, and the air was thicker, almost choking him with invisible weight. The hallway stretched endlessly with doors on both sides like mouths waiting. To open, he felt a draft of icy wind coming from one door that was slightly open. The sound of dripping water echoed from inside, but the ground was dry. He pushed the door slowly, and it creaked louder than thunder in the silence. Inside the room was a broken crib swinging by itself, though the air was still. And on the wall, scratched deep, were words saying, "Leave before it takes you." His lantern shook in his hand, and shadows danced like demons around the room. The words on the wall looked fresh, as if carved by invisible claws only moments ago. He felt the room breathing in and out like it was alive, holding its own heart. The broken crib creaked faster, like unseen hands were rocking it harder and harder. He tried to step back, but the door slammed shut behind him with a deafening bang. The sound rattled the broken window, and dust fell like ash from the ceiling. He screamed for help, but his voice was swallowed into silence like the house ate it. The crib stopped moving suddenly, leaving an unnatural stillness in the room. He could hear his own heartbeat echoing against the wooden walls. A faint figure appeared in the corner, blurry like smoke, yet shaped like a child. The figure had hollow eyes glowing faintly and a smile too wide to be human. It whispered his name, though he never told it to anyone inside this house. His knees weakened as he realized the spirit knew him before he even arrived. The shadow child stretched its arms like it wanted to be held, and in that moment he felt a pull stronger than gravity dragging him closer. He shut his eyes and prayed louder, hoping light would burn the darkness away. But when he opened them, the figure was now right in front of his face. The smile had grown impossibly wide, stretching beyond its pale cheeks. It raised its hand and touched his chest, freezing his heart in place. A piercing scream filled the room, but he could not tell if it was his or the child's. The lantern burst, and the room drowned in complete blackness, swallowing every corner. He gasped for breath, but the air was thick like smoke, choking his lungs. Whispers filled his ears, dozens of voices chanting words he could not understand. The walls began to bleed, thick, dark liquid dripping down like tears of the house. The crib caught fire, though no flame touched it, and burned with blue light. He ran to the door, slamming it with his fists, but it would not open his. Hands bled against the wood, yet the door felt like solid stone behind him. The whispers became laughter, circling closer like a storm of shadows. He turned once more, and the child's spirit now towered taller than him, and with hollow glowing eyes it whispered, "Welcome home." His scream echoed through the house, shaking the broken windows violently. But outside no one could hear as the storm had grown louder, hiding every cry. The walls pulsed like veins, carrying some monstrous blood beneath the wood. He stumbled back, hitting the corner, while the spirit leaned closer step by step. Its face kept changing, twisting between a child, a woman, and something beastly. Every blink he took, the figure became more horrific, more unnatural. Its limbs stretched like ropes, cracking as bones bent the wrong way. The ceiling above him groaned, as if something massive crawled across. Dust fell on his head like the house itself was collapsing into darkness. He tried to crawl, but the floorboards turned sticky, trapping his hands. The smell of decay filled his nose, so strong it made him vomit. He begged for mercy, but the spirit only laughed in multiple voices. Its hand reached again, and this time it passed through his chest like smoke. He felt his heartbeat in its grip, cold and burning at the same time, and the last thing he saw before fainting was its endless grin. The house felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were leaning closer, breathing along with the fear inside. Every corner carried whispers that grew louder whenever silence tried to take over. The windows shook gently, though the night was still and no wind was blowing outside. Her hands trembled as she held the candle tighter, watching the flame bend unnaturally. A shadow stretched across the floor, moving slower than any human could move. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing like footsteps inside her ears. She could smell something old and rotten, as if the past was rotting in the very air. The floorboards beneath her creaked with a rhythm like someone else walking beside her. The air grew colder with each breath, making it hard to even speak or call for help. She felt unseen eyes following every motion of her shaking hands. The candle flickered harder, as if it wanted to escape the darkness itself. The silence broke with a faint knock from the upstairs hallway, repeating in threes. Her voice refused to leave her throat. Her fear stitched her lips closed. In the distance, the grandfather clock struck a single note, though midnight had passed long ago. She realized she was no longer standing alone in the hallway. Something had arrived. The knocking upstairs grew louder, each strike carrying weight like bones hitting wood. The sound crawled down the staircase, with every echo making her knees weaker. Her mind screamed to run, but her feet felt nailed to the cold wooden floor. The candlelight stretched shadows into monstrous shapes that touched the ceiling. The smell of ash and burnt paper filled the room, though no fire was burning. Her ears rang with whispers calling her name in voices that weren't human. A sudden rush of air blew past her, cold enough to sting her skin. The sound of breathing came from behind her, slow, deep, and heavy like a beast. Her chest tightened as she turned, but nothing was there, only shifting shadows. The hallway seemed longer than before, stretching into darkness without an end. The floor began to tremble lightly like something massive walking far beneath the house. Her reflection on the glass window moved a second too late, copying her late and wrong. She pressed her hand against the wall, but it pulsed like warm skin, alive and trembling. A door creaked open on its own upstairs, though she had locked everything earlier. Her candle died, leaving her trapped in a suffocating sea of black. Darkness swallowed everything, leaving her blind in the vast, choking silence. She reached out, but the air felt thicker, like invisible hands brushing her arms. Her breathing quickened, turning into shallow gasps that sounded too loud in the void. From above, faint footsteps began to descend, slow and deliberate, one after another. She pressed against the wall, but it pulsed again like a heartbeat, not wood. Her mind blurred between dream and waking reality as whispers slid into her head. They spoke in a language she didn't know, yet her soul understood the warning. The stairs groaned under the weight of something descending, something heavy and wrong. Her skin prickled, as though every hair on her body was sensing danger at once. She tried to scream, but her voice was swallowed by the black, pressing air. The smell of soil and grave dirt grew stronger until she gagged. Her hands shook as she reached blindly and touched something wet and cold. It slipped through her fingers like blood, but no wound was on her hand. Her heart raced faster as the final step creaked, echoing in the silent house. The presence now stood only inches away, though she could not see its face. A sudden glow of pale light filled the room just enough to reveal the figure. It was tall, thin, with bones pressing through its gray skin like stone under cloth. Its eyes were hollow black pits that sucked in the candleless light around them. The stench of decay rolled off it, making her choke as she stumbled backward. Its arms stretched unnaturally long, brushing the walls as it moved closer slowly. The creature tilted its head, its neck snapping with the sound of breaking branches. Whispers poured from its mouth, though the lips never moved, only darkness leaked out. She felt her body weaken, as if the whispers were stealing the strength from her. Her vision blurred, the house spun, yet the figure remained crystal clear. The walls seemed to bend around it, forming a tunnel that trapped her with it. Its hand reached out, claw-like fingers twitching like they were learning how to move. She gasped for breath, every inhale colder than the last, cutting her throat like ice. Her back hit the door, but it was locked, though she had never locked it. The figure leaned closer, its breath colder than death, brushing across her face. She closed her eyes, but the whispers grew louder, forcing her to hear everything. The whispers crawled through her skull, filling every thought, every memory, every dream. She saw flashes of lives not her own. People screaming in this very house. Shadows dragging bodies down into the floor where the wood turned soft and hungry. She fought to keep her mind hers, but the voices twisted reality into nightmare. The creature's face pressed closer until she felt nothing but cold emptiness. The pale light flickered, revealing dozens of faces trapped in the walls, watching silently. Each face mouthed the same words, though she could not hear them over the whispers. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed to the floor, hands shaking uncontrollably. The creature crouched low, its bones cracking as it bent toward her trembling form. Its claw touched her forehead, sending a shock of burning cold through her skull. She screamed inside her mind, but her mouth produced no sound, only silence. The candle on the floor suddenly reignited on its own, casting wild shadows. In that brief light, she saw the creature's face fully, and it was her own. Her reflection, twisted and hollow, staring back at her with black, empty eyes. The last thing she felt was the house breathing in before everything went dark. The night sky above the forest was heavy, with silence, as if even the stars refused to shine their light. Ethan and Claire moved carefully, with only the faint glow of the lantern guiding their way through the narrow trail. The trees leaned closer like watchers, whispering secrets of old, forgotten times. Claire felt a cold hand brush her shoulder, though when she turned, no one was there. Ethan tightened his grip on her hand as the chill wrapped around them stronger than before. Their breaths rose in the air, white and heavy, like smoke escaping from unseen fire. Every step seemed to sink deeper into the ground, as if the earth wanted to hold them down. The sound of snapping twigs echoed louder than it should in the hollow night. Claire whispered, "Ethan, did you hear that?" But his eyes already showed he had. Behind them came the sound of soft footsteps, light yet deliberate in rhythm. The lantern flickered, and its glow bent strangely, like pulled by invisible fingers. Ethan raised it higher, but the light refused to stretch into the darkness around them. Claire felt her heart pound harder, each second like a drum calling something closer. Ethan muttered, "Keep walking and do not look back," but his voice trembled with unease. The forest grew darker until even the lantern felt too weak to fight the shadows. They reached a clearing, but the relief never came because the air here was even colder. The trees stopped at the edge as though afraid to step into this part of the land the ground was covered in, mist rolling like waves of breath escaping the earth itself. Claire whispered, "It feels wrong here," but Ethan forced a steady voice, saying, "We keep moving." In the center stood an old stone altar, cracked and covered with strange carvings. The carvings pulsed faintly like veins, carrying a dim red glow beneath the rock. Ethan felt his legs weaken as he stared at the symbols, unable to look away. Claire grabbed his arm, shaking him. "Ethan, do not stare at it, come back." The mist swirled thicker, and within it shapes began to form, shifting slowly. They looked like faces stretched in pain, their mouths open in silent screams. The faces swam closer, reaching out with long, misty hands that broke apart and reformed. The lantern sputtered, but instead of dying, it suddenly blazed with unnatural brightness. The faces recoiled, hissing like steam, fading back into the mist with anger. Claire gasped, clutching Ethan, "This place is alive. It does not want us here." But Ethan only whispered, "Someone brought us here for a reason. We cannot turn back now." The altar shook slightly, as if reacting to their presence on sacred ground. A deep vibration passed beneath their feet, and Claire nearly fell to her knees. Ethan pulled her close, holding her tight, as the sound grew louder underground. It was not thunder, it was not wind, it was something alive moving below them. The mist rose higher, curling around their ankles and binding them in cold. Claire screamed, trying to pull free, but the mist tightened like hands of ice. The carvings on the altar glowed brighter, spreading light across the entire clearing. Each symbol seemed to beat like a heart, keeping rhythm with the earth beneath. Ethan closed his eyes, forcing himself to stay calm, though terror gripped him. The light from the carvings reached the mist, and suddenly the faces reappeared. They circled Ethan and Claire, their eyes hollow, their expressions endless sorrow. Claire cried out, "They want something. Ethan, they want something from us." Ethan lifted the lantern, holding it high. The flame flared, but did not burn. The faces stopped and stared at the lantern as if it was what they sought. In the silence, Ethan realized the lantern was not ordinary, it was the key. The flame inside the lantern twisted, forming shapes that almost looked like letters. Claire gasped as she read them slowly, though the language was ancient still. Her tongue shaped the sounds, and they echoed louder than her own voice. The mist shivered violently, recoiling from her every word like struck by light. Ethan held the lantern steady, watching Claire as if she carried the power now. The carvings on the altar began to shift, rearranging themselves into new patterns. A low hum filled the air, like the voice of the forest itself awakening. Claire kept speaking, though tears streamed down her face from the burning in her throat. The faces in the mist screamed silently and began to tear apart into smoke. Ethan looked at the flame and saw it glow gold instead of red for a moment. The earth stopped trembling, as though holding its breath to listen. Claire's final word broke into the air, and the mist exploded outward violently. The clearing was empty again, the altar now dark and lifeless like ordinary stone. Ethan rushed to Claire, holding her trembling body as she gasped for breath. But before he could comfort her, the lantern flickered once more with a warning glow. Claire clung to Ethan, whispering, "I felt something enter me when I spoke those words." Her voice cracked like it belonged to two people speaking at once. Ethan stared into her eyes and saw a strange flicker of light deep inside them. It was golden at first, but quickly turned into something darker and shifting. Claire cried, "I cannot stop it. Ethan, it is inside me. I cannot fight it." Ethan shook his head, refusing to accept the fear clawing inside his chest. He held her face, whispering, "Stay with me. Claire, you are stronger than this." But her body trembled violently, as if fighting an invisible force tearing her apart. The lantern swung in his hand, the flame sparking angrily without reason. The clearing seemed to bend around them, the air warping like broken glass. Claire screamed, falling to her knees as her voice turned inhuman for a second. Ethan dropped beside her, wrapping his arms around her, ignoring the shaking ground. He begged, "Do not leave me, Claire, do not let it take you away from me." Her scream cut short, and silence filled the forest as though time had stopped. Then Claire lifted her head, and her eyes no longer looked like her own. Her gaze glowed with a deep crimson light, swirling like endless fire inside. Ethan stumbled back, staring in disbelief, yet unable to abandon her side. Claire rose slowly, her movements too smooth, too controlled, too unnatural. The voice that came from her mouth was layered, as if many spoke through her. It said, "The door has been opened, and the debt must be paid in full." Ethan shouted, "Let her go, take me instead, leave her alone." The voice laughed, cold and cruel, echoing across the clearing. Like thunder it replied, "The bond is sealed, her body is the vessel. Her soul is the path." Claire's hands lifted without her will, glowing with the same crimson fire. The altar behind them lit again, though no one touched it or spoke the words. Symbols blazed like burning brands across the stone, filling the night with fire. Ethan shielded his eyes from the blinding glow, but refused to step back. He reached for her, desperately crying, "Claire, fight it, please do not give in." For a moment her eyes flickered gold again, and her lips formed his name softly. But the crimson fire returned stronger than before, swallowing the last of her glow. The forest itself began to scream, as if every tree was alive in torment. Branches cracked violently, falling around them, though no wind blew. The ground split open at the altar, sending up sparks of red-hot fire. Ethan held his ground, even as the world crumbled in chaos around him. Claire floated slightly above the ground, her hair flowing like smoke. The layered voice declared the offering begins, and the chains must break. A surge of energy burst from her body, throwing Ethan back against a tree. He gasped for air as blood trickled from his forehead from the impact. The lantern landed beside him, and instead of breaking it, burned brighter. The flame inside swirled gold, once more calling to him like a heartbeat. Ethan dragged himself to it, ignoring the pain screaming through his body. He clutched it tight, feeling the heat sear his skin, but refusing to let go. The flame whispered into his mind, words not spoken, yet clearly understood. It told him there is still time if he chooses sacrifice over surrender. Ethan rose shakily, ready to face the fire and whatever price it demanded. Ethan staggered toward Claire, who floated above the altar in crimson fire. The voices laughed louder, as if mocking his bravery against impossible power. But Ethan held the lantern high, shouting words he did not know he knew. The flame burst into golden light, so bright it split the darkness open. Claire's body convulsed, as if torn between two forces fighting for her soul. The voices screamed in rage, "We will not be denied, the debt is ours." Ethan stepped onto the altar, though the stone burned like molten lava. He pressed the lantern to his chest, crying, "Take me instead, take my life." The golden flame flared outward, covering both him and Claire in light. The crimson fire hissed violently, recoiling like a beast driven back by purity. The air shook, the ground cracked, and the forest roared louder than ever. Claire gasped as her eyes flickered gold again, struggling to resurface. Ethan shouted, "Claire, remember us, remember who you are, do not let them win." The lantern's flame wrapped around her like chains of light, breaking the crimson hold. The voices howled with fury, fading back into the mist, leaving only silence. Claire collapsed into Ethan's arms, weak but alive, as the glow faded from her eyes. He held her close, whispering, "It is over, it is finally over," though he doubted it. The altar lay broken behind them, split in half, the carvings gone forever. The forest was silent, but not peaceful. It felt like a wound that would never heal. Claire shivered against him, whispering, "I remember everything they showed me." Her voice cracked as tears streamed down, her face heavy with what she had seen. She said, "They are not gone, Ethan. They are only waiting for another chance." Ethan pulled her closer, refusing to let her slip away again, no matter the cost. He kissed her forehead, gently whispering, "Then we will be ready when they return." The lantern flickered faintly, as if agreeing, but its light grew weaker now. Claire touched it carefully, whispering, "It feels different, like it gave everything." Ethan nodded, saying, "Maybe it saved us, but left nothing of itself behind." The mist cleared, slowly retreating into the deeper parts of the forest. The sky above them opened, showing the stars finally shining once again. But in Ethan's heart a shadow remained, whispering that the fight was not finished. They stumbled out of the clearing into the forest path once more. Claire leaned heavily against Ethan, her strength drained from the struggle. The forest still looked twisted, but less alive than before, as if sleeping. Ethan kept the broken lantern in his hand, though it now gave no flame. Claire whispered, "Ethan, I saw what they want. They will not stop with me." Her voice shook, but her eyes held determination, no longer fear. She said, "They want the world itself, and they will tear through anyone in the way." Ethan nodded quietly, because deep inside he already knew it was true, but he whispered then, "We will fight together and never let them win." The ground beneath them rumbled lightly, as if reminding them the bond still lingered. Claire looked at him with tired eyes, but a faint smile touched her lips. She said, "Whatever happens, you saved me, and I will never forget that." Ethan squeezed her hand tightly, whispering, "I would burn the world for you." They walked slowly into the distance, the forest watching with unseen eyes. And far behind them, the altar's broken stones pulsed once faintly, then fell dark. The silence inside the abandoned house was thick, like a heavy blanket wrapping around every breath. Broken windows allowed the cold wind to rush in, carrying whispers that felt like voices not from this world. The wooden floor groaned with every cautious step, as if warning me to leave before it was too late. Shadows danced on the cracked walls, moving in ways that did not match the flicker of my flashlight. A sudden creak echoed from the upstairs hallway, as if someone unseen was pacing back and forth. My heart pounded so loud it felt like the entire house could hear it, beating faster than ever. I tried to convince myself it was only the old structure settling, but the sound grew heavier. The smell of dust mixed with something foul like rotting wood and decayed. Earth filled the air. Every door seemed slightly open, as if inviting me inside rooms that held forgotten memories. A broken mirror leaned against the wall, reflecting not just my shape, but something behind me. When I turned quickly, there was nothing but the empty hallway stretching into darkness. Still, my instincts screamed that I was not walking through this place alone. Something lingered. I tightened my grip on the flashlight, though the trembling in my hand gave away my fear. Each corner seemed darker than the last, hiding secrets too sinister to be uncovered by light. I knew going deeper was a mistake, yet something unseen kept pulling me forward step by step. Upstairs, the air felt colder, as if the entire floor had been abandoned by warmth long ago. The wallpaper peeled away like dead skin, revealing black stains that seemed alive underneath. Every door was carved with scratches, as though someone or something had tried to claw its way out. The faint sound of dripping water echoed through the corridor, yet there were no pipes to be seen. I felt eyes watching me from behind every doorway, but when I turned, nothing waited for me. My shoes crunched over shards of glass from a shattered lamp scattered across the floor. The faint smell of burnt wood filled my nose, though no fire had touched the house in years. Suddenly, a door at the end of the hallway slammed shut with a force that shook the floorboards. I froze, my breath stuck in my throat, my pulse racing faster than I could control. The light flickered once, twice, and for a moment, the hallway was swallowed by complete blackness. When the beam returned, I saw handprints smeared on the wall, red and wet as if freshly made. The prints stretched along the corridor leading toward the locked room that had just slammed shut. I whispered to myself not to follow, not to open that door, but my feet betrayed me anyway. The closer I got, the louder a low growl echoed from behind the wood, like a beast waiting. I stopped inches away, trembling as the growl turned into whispers calling my name over and over. The door in front of me rattled violently, as if something inside was desperate to be freed. I staggered back, but my curiosity mixed with fear kept me rooted instead of running away. The whispers from behind the door grew louder, weaving into a chant I could not understand. The walls began to shake, dust raining down from the ceiling as cracks spread like veins. I raised my hand to the door handle, though my instincts screamed against touching it at all. Before my fingers reached the knob, the door burst open on its own, slamming against the wall. A gust of freezing wind surged out, extinguishing my flashlight for a few terrifying seconds. When the light flickered back on the room, beyond was empty, nothing but dust and broken furniture. Still, the whispers continued circling me, though the room was completely deserted and hollow. The air felt heavy, as if invisible hands pressed down on my chest, stealing every breath. The floorboards groaned again, but this time the sound was directly beneath my feet, vibrating upwards. Suddenly, the ground split open slightly, and something dark slithered through the cracks like smoke. The shape twisted, rising higher until it formed a figure with hollow eyes staring at me. Its presence radiated cold so intense my skin burned as if touched by frost. I stumbled backward, unable to scream, as the shadow figure stretched its hand toward my face. The shadow figure moved closer, its steps silent, yet every motion carried unbearable weight. Its eyes glowed faintly, not with light, but with emptiness deeper than the darkest pit. My flashlight flickered again, dimming until the figure was the only thing visible in the dark. I tried to run, but my legs felt like they were chained to the floor, unmoving and heavy. A whisper seeped from its mouth, 1,000 voices layered into one soundless command to obey. The air in the room shifted, pulling inward as though the figure was sucking in everything around. My lungs burned. I struggled for air, each breath thinner and colder than the last. I reached out blindly, knocking over a chair that fell with a crash echoing like thunder. For a moment, the figure hesitated, shrinking back slightly as if sound had weakened its form. Seizing the chance, I bolted out of the room, my footsteps pounding through the hallway. The walls groaned as if the entire house was alive and angry that I dared to escape. Behind me, the whispers turned to shrieks, a chorus of agony rising in unbearable volume. I stumbled down the staircase, nearly falling as the railing snapped under my hand. The front door appeared ahead, glowing faintly as if offering salvation in the endless dark. I sprinted toward it, praying that somehow the exit would free me from the house's grip. The front door refused to open, no matter how hard I pulled the handle or pushed the frame. It felt like the wood itself was fused to the walls, trapping me in with the darkness inside. The shrieks from behind grew closer. The sound now mixed with heavy footsteps pounding the floor. I hammered my fists against the door, yelling. But no sound left my throat, no scream escaped. My voice had been stolen by the house, leaving me silent in my desperation and fear. The windows along the walls warped, showing reflections of myself that did not move in unison. Their smiles twisted, mocking me as they banged on the glass from the other side. I spun around, searching for another exit, but the hallway stretched longer than before. The staircase had vanished behind me, replaced by shadows twisting like moving walls. Every breath burned my chest colder and sharper, as if I was breathing shards of ice. My flashlight sputtered, dying until only faint sparks of light flickered against the black. The shrieks transformed again, this time into laughter, echoing from every direction at once. Invisible hands grazed my shoulders and neck, dragging icy trails across my skin. I collapsed against the unyielding door as the laughter rose to deafening heights. I realized there was no escape, not from the house, not from the thing that lived inside. Suddenly the laughter cut off, replaced by silence so complete it crushed the air around me. The house stopped, shifting the walls no longer, groaning, yet the stillness was far worse. From the center of the room, a figure slowly formed, glowing faintly with pale blue light. It was the same shadow creature, but now clearer, revealing a human-like shape beneath the smoke. Its face resembled mine, twisted into a reflection warped by grief, anger, and pain. I reached out instinctively, but the moment my hand neared it, the figure split into many. Dozens of shadows spread across the room, each carrying fragments of my own appearance. They circled me silently, moving in patterns like a ritual I could not comprehend. The blue glow brightened until it felt like the walls would crack under the pressure of it. Each shadow's mouth opened wide, but no sound came, only the endless motion of chanting. I shut my eyes tight, wishing it would all vanish, but the cold only grew stronger. When I opened them again, the shadows had stopped, every figure staring directly at me. My body locked in place, unable to resist, as one stepped forward, reaching out its hand. The moment its fingers brushed my arm, a rush of memories not my own poured into me. Visions of pain, betrayal, and endless torment filled my head until I screamed without voice. The visions consumed me, dragging me into darkness deeper than the house itself could hold. I saw children crying in the same hall's, faces pale with fear before vanishing into shadows. I saw men and women clawing at the walls, begging to be released, yet no door opened. I felt the pain of countless souls, trapped within the wood and stone of this cursed place. Their voices filled my mind, so loud it felt like my skull would crack under the weight. Every scream was layered over another, creating a storm of agony impossible to silence. The blue glow flickered again, showing glimpses of blood stained across the wooden floors. Names whispered in my ear, names I had never known, yet felt carved into my very being. The weight of centuries pressed down on me as though the entire history of the house lived inside. I dropped to my knees, gasping, though no air filled my lungs, only the suffocating cold. The shadows leaned closer, their faces all wearing my reflection, but twisted with torment. I begged in my mind for it to stop, for the house to release me, for mercy that never came. The floor beneath me opened once again, cracks glowing blue like veins pulsing with light. The shadows shoved me toward the opening, their whispers rising into triumphant screams. I tried to fight, but the force pulled me downward into the chasm of endless darkness below. The fall seemed eternal, yet there was no wind, only silence pressing against every part of me. Below me the glow grew brighter, spreading across an underground chamber of impossible size. The walls dripped with black liquid, glowing faintly in patterns resembling ancient runes. At the center of the chamber stood a massive figure larger than the house itself. It was made of shifting shadows, its eyes burning with endless emptiness and hunger. Chains bound it to the ground, yet each link trembled as if they could break any moment. The whispers I had heard were coming from this entity, layered like a choir of voices. Its presence crushed me, instantly forcing me to bow, though I fought against it with all will. I realized the house was only a cage built above to contain this unimaginable creature. The souls trapped inside were sacrifices, feeding its endless hunger over centuries of time. The figure turned its gaze to me, though it had no face. I felt its attention pierce my core. Its chains rattled, violently shaking the chamber, as dust and stone rained from the ceiling. The voices grew louder, chanting faster as the figure pulled harder against its bonds. The floor beneath me cracked, glowing brighter, until I thought the ground would collapse. I understood too late that I had been brought here not as a visitor, but as the next offering. The chains burst with a deafening snap, one by one, until only silence followed each break. The ground trembled so violently I collapsed, gripping the earth as the chamber shook apart. The massive figure rose higher, its form shifting into something both beast and human. It towered over me, the shadows forming limbs, wings, and faces that constantly changed. Its voice finally spoke, clearly resonating inside my skull with unbearable force. "You are mine now," it whispered, though it never moved its mouth. The words burned my mind. I tried to scream, tried to run, but my body refused, every command locked in paralysis. The walls of the chamber shattered, revealing endless voids stretching farther than sight. Souls poured out from the broken walls, swirling like a storm around the towering entity. Their cries filled the void, becoming fuel, feeding the monster until its size doubled again. It lifted one massive hand, reaching down to grasp me like I was nothing more than dust. The closer it came, the colder I felt, until my skin cracked with frost spreading across. Time slowed, every second stretching like hours as its fingers closed around my body. I felt the crushing weight of centuries of darkness pressing into my soul, breaking me apart. The monster's laughter filled the void as I realized escape was no longer possible ever. Just before its hand fully closed around me, the void rippled as if disturbed by another force. A blinding light tore through the darkness, cutting across the storm of souls with fury. The massive figure recoiled, shrieking in a sound that shattered every bone in my body. The chains reappeared, glowing white, and wrapped around its limbs, dragging it back down. The souls were pulled upward toward the light, screaming both in pain and in freedom. I felt the grip of paralysis loosen just enough to lift my head and see the source. A figure bathed in golden fire hovered above, radiant, yet too bright to recognize. Its voice echoed with power, commanding the darkness to return to its prison once again. The shadow monster writhed, struggling, yet the light forced it lower into the broken ground. The chamber began collapsing, stones and shadows falling into the abyss without end. I was lifted by the same light, carried upward away from the destruction and the void. The air around me warmed for the first time since I had entered that cursed house. I felt tears burn my eyes, not from fear, but from the overwhelming rush of relief. The last thing I heard before losing consciousness was the voice, whispering, "You are safe now." And then everything faded, leaving me suspended between light and darkness without choice. The moonlight stretched across the broken path, casting eerie shadows that danced like whispers of the forgotten. Ethan walked carefully, his steps heavy, as if the ground itself resisted his presence. The silence was unnatural, as if the world held its breath, waiting for something to happen. Every tree stood like a silent watcher, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The air grew colder, wrapping around his skin like an invisible shroud. He felt the weight of eyes upon him, though he could see nothing in the darkness. Each rustle in the leaves felt too close, too deliberate, too alive. The wind no longer howled, it murmured secrets that clawed at his ears. He tightened his grip on the lantern, though the flame flickered as if afraid. The ruins ahead looked older than time, their stones cracked, yet pulsing with hidden life. A strange glow seeped from the cracks, crawling along the ground like veins of light. Ethan's chest rose and fell rapidly as he realized. The glow moved in rhythm with his heart. Something unseen was connected to him, binding him in ways he could not fight. The silence broke with a low hum that made his bones vibrate and his thoughts scatter. He knew the path forward was not just a journey, but a descent into something unearthly. The air carried a scent, metallic, sharp like blood, yet sweet enough to deceive. Ethan's legs felt heavy, as if unseen chains dragged at his ankles. The shadows grew bolder, sliding across the ground like living things. The lantern's flame bent and twisted as though it tried to escape the place entirely. Every step he took was mirrored by another sound too precise to be an echo. He turned quickly, but the path behind him was empty, swallowed by darkness. His breath caught in his throat, yet he pushed forward against the dread. The ruins whispered now, their broken stones forming words he could almost hear. Voices layered over each other, rising and falling like a dark choir. Each syllable crawled into his skull, searing his thoughts with alien meaning. He wanted to run, but his body obeyed something beyond his will. The ground trembled faintly, as if a heart deep below was beating in anger. He realized the earth itself seemed alive, breathing in slow, dreadful patterns. His skin prickled with cold sweat as unseen fingers brushed across his arms. Ethan knew he was not walking alone, the ruins were walking with him. The ruins opened into a wide circle or shattered. Pillars jutted from the soil like broken teeth. A strange altar stood in the center, carved from black stone that shimmered faintly. Symbols older than memory wrapped the surface, glowing with a faint crimson hue. The whispers grew louder, aligning into words that made no sense, yet felt undeniable. Ethan felt himself stepping closer, though every instinct screamed for him to stop. The lantern flickered violently, then extinguished, leaving him in the glow of the altar. His hands trembled as the light from the symbols crawled up his legs. It sank into his skin like molten fire, yet left no mark, only trembling fear. He gasped for air, but his chest felt bound by invisible coils. A sudden vision burst into his mind of shadows rising from the ground. Figures with hollow eyes stretching toward him, calling his name without lips. He staggered, gripping his head as the world spun into fragments of nightmare. The altar pulsed like a heart, each beat shaking the ground beneath him. The whispers screamed, now filling his skull until his thoughts were nothing. He realized the ruins were not ruins at all, but a prison holding something alive. The prison was cracking as he stood frozen before the altar, unable to move. The crimson light bled across the stones, spilling into the earth like veins of fire. Each beat grew louder, each glow brighter, as if the thing inside was waking. Ethan dropped to his knees, his hands digging into the soil to anchor himself. But the soil writhed beneath his fingers, alive and shifting like flesh. He screamed, but the sound was swallowed before leaving his lips. The whispers transformed into laughter, cold and endless, echoing through the night. Shapes began to rise from the cracks, silhouettes of creatures not meant for eyes. Their forms twisted constantly, wings, claws, faces blending and unraveling. Ethan crawled backward, but the ground pulled him closer like quicksand. The altar's glow shot upward, forming a column of red light piercing the sky. The stars themselves seemed to flicker as if the heavens trembled in fear. His heart pounded until it felt like it might shatter inside his chest. Every breath came sharp, every thought drowned by the hum of awakening. He realized he had not stumbled upon the ruins, he had been summoned. The realization crushed him as if chains of destiny wrapped tighter with each beat. His body felt weaker, yet the pull toward the altar only grew stronger. The figures surrounding him chanted words that split the air into shards. The sky cracked above with thunderless sound, revealing veins of light. Ethan's eyes burned as visions poured into his mind without mercy. He saw wars fought with shadows, devouring entire cities in silence. He saw oceans boiling into mist under the gaze of a faceless being. He saw stars torn from the sky, collapsing into the endless dark. And in every vision, he saw himself standing at the center of ruin. His soul trembled, but could not deny the truth that clawed at him. The altar's glow wrapped around his body like threads of fire. He could not fight, he could only surrender as the force consumed him. The laughter grew closer, no longer distant, but circling his ears. It whispered promises of power, pain, and eternal chains he could not break. The ground cracked fully as something enormous began to rise. The altar split down the middle, releasing a surge of blinding crimson light. The earth shook violently, throwing Ethan onto his back, gasping for breath. The shadows screamed as if the prison's lock had been shattered forever. A hand emerged, massive, black, and clawed, breaking through the soil with force. Its fingers scraped across the stones, leaving scars that glowed with heat. Another hand followed, gripping the edge of the altar and pulling upward. The ground buckled as something immense pushed itself toward freedom. Ethan's eyes widened, tears blurring his sight as terror consumed him. The creature was not fully visible, yet its presence crushed the air itself. The darkness bent around it, as if afraid to touch its form. Every heartbeat in Ethan's chest matched the thunder of its awakening. The figures around him fell to their knees, chanting in manic joy. Their voices blended into a storm that shook the broken pillars. The creature roared a sound that tore through sky and earth alike. Ethan knew this was not the end, it was the beginning of horror. The roar echoed through the ruins, traveling farther than sound should reach. Ethan clutched his ears, yet the vibration rattled his bones to breaking. The sky dimmed though no clouds covered the stars, only darkness itself spreading. He tried to crawl away, but the earth split behind him, cutting off escape. The creature rose taller, now its form shifting beyond comprehension. Its eyes burned like suns, though they showed no mercy, only hunger. Every glance from the being seared into his flesh, though it left no wound. He screamed again, but his voice shattered against the weight of silence. The chanting turned wild, the figures dancing around the altar with frenzy. The air itself throbbed, each breath painful, as if inhaling fire. Ethan's body shook uncontrollably, his will crumbling under the monstrous gaze. The creature spoke though no mouth moved, its voice thundered inside his mind. Each word carved into his soul, leaving scars deeper than blood. He realized the whispers had always been its voice calling him here. He was not a witness, he was the chosen vessel. The truth sank in colder than death as Ethan's vision blurred with dread. The glow wrapped tighter around him, binding him to the altar's force. His veins burned, as if liquid fire replaced every drop of blood inside. The ground beneath him pulsed as though the earth's heart beat within his chest. The figures bowed lower, chanting louder, giving their devotion to the beast. The creature's form towered higher, still eclipsing even the broken ruins. It leaned closer, its burning eyes locking onto Ethan without blinking. He felt his mind shatter fragment by fragment under that gaze. Every memory of his life cracked, as if erased by fire and shadow. The voice spoke again, promising eternity, promising chains disguised as power. It called his name not with sound, but with the essence of creation itself. He felt smaller than dust, yet unable to resist the command. His body rose against his will, arms stretched toward the crimson light. The altar split further, swallowing his shadow into its core. Ethan cried out, but the sound vanished before it reached the air. The crimson light engulfed him, tearing flesh from spirit, binding soul to shadow. He saw visions of himself standing in endless deserts of ash and bone. He saw creatures bowing to him, their faces faceless, their voices unending. He saw the sky burning red as he raised his hands with unnatural strength. But every vision was hollow, filled with screams, echoing forever in silence. The creature's laughter filled his veins, making his blood boil with dread. His body twisted, pain lancing through his bones as chains coiled tighter. His eyes rolled back as the crimson glow consumed even his thoughts. Every beat of the altar was now his heartbeat, chained forever. The figures roared in triumph, their chants breaking into wild screams. The sky cracked again, releasing rivers of darkness pouring into the land. The creature's full form emerged, wings stretching wider than the horizon. It stood free, its prison broken, its power reborn in endless night. Ethan's soul clung to itself, but he knew he was fading away. The altar pulsed once more, sealing his fate as the chosen one. The ruins collapsed under the weight of unleashed power, crushing the circle of stones. The earth swallowed itself, opening abysses that spread like endless mouths. The chanting stopped, replaced by cries of worship and madness in unison. The creature stood fully revealed, its form too vast to comprehend, with eyes like fire. It raised its head, and the stars above shattered, falling like glass into nothing. Ethan floated above the altar, no longer himself bound to the crimson threads. His scream echoed across the world, though no one would hear it as human. The altar's glow became his glow, his soul chained to the dark will forever. He saw cities burning, though no fire touched them, only shadows devouring. He saw oceans screaming as waves rose without reason, drowning the land. He saw the future broken, twisted, ruled not by life, but by eternal void. The laughter inside him grew louder, filling every corner of his being. The creature opened its wings, blotting out the last fragments of the sky. The ruins no longer existed, only a throne of darkness rising from the soil. And Ethan realized the story of his life had ended. But the story of horror had just begun. The forest air grew heavier as shadows stretched across the mossy ground. Every rustle in the trees felt like a whisper of secrets long forgotten. The boy could feel unseen eyes watching his every move. His breath came shallow as he stepped over twisted roots. The lantern's dim glow flickered against the growing darkness. Owls hooted from above like guardians of the unknown. A chilling breeze carried the scent of damp earth and decay. The silence between the sounds felt louder than thunder. Every step forward felt like walking into another realm. The boy's heartbeat echoed louder than his footsteps. He whispered to himself that he must stay strong. The path narrowed into a corridor of crooked branches. Leaves fell gently, but landed like warnings on the ground. He tightened his grip on the lantern handle with trembling hands. The sense of something ancient waiting grew stronger around him. The wind shifted and carried a faint, distant cry across the trees. It was not human, yet it was not entirely animal either. The boy froze in place with his ears straining to listen. His pulse raced as the sound came closer with every gust. Branches creaked as though the forest itself was groaning alive. The lantern flickered again, as if struggling against unseen forces. Shadows stretched into shapes that seemed almost human. The boy whispered softly, asking who was out there. The silence that followed felt heavy and suffocating. Then the cry returned, this time sharper and filled with sorrow. It felt like the grief of someone lost for centuries. The boy shivered and forced himself to take another step. The trees closed tighter around the winding trail. Every instinct told him to run, but his mission anchored him. He knew the answers he sought lay deeper in this darkness. The deeper he walked, the more the forest changed its face. The trees twisted into grotesque figures like frozen screams. Roots curled across the path like claws reaching to trap him. The air smelled older than time, like dust and forgotten bones. The cry turned into a wail that pierced through his chest. It felt as if the sound was pulling his soul forward. The boy covered his ears, but it only grew louder inside his mind. He stumbled on the uneven ground, yet forced himself up again. His breath turned cold fog, even though no frost was around. The lantern dimmed until only a faint ember remained. He whispered to the light, begging it not to die. The shadows shifted like living creatures reaching for him. Leaves rustled though no wind touched the ground. The boy called out to the voice, demanding it show itself. The forest trembled as if it had been waiting for that challenge. A figure appeared in the mist, rising slowly between the trees. It was tall, thin, and cloaked in layers of tattered shadows. Its face hidden, but its presence radiated ancient sorrow. The boy gripped the lantern tighter, though its glow was faint. The figure's voice slid into his mind rather than the air. It asked him why he had disturbed the silence of this realm. The boy's knees trembled, but his voice refused to break. He said he came seeking the truth no matter the cost. The figure tilted its head as if weighing his soul. The wailing stopped and silence fell heavy again. The forest leaned in closer like it too awaited the answer. The boy's heart hammered, but he stood without backing away. The figure reached out a hand made of smoke and memory. Its touch did not harm, but it froze the boy's courage in ice. The figure whispered that the truth carried unbearable weight. The boy asked what truth could be so heavy to break him. The figure's hollow voice told him of forgotten bloodlines. It spoke of curses woven into his very existence. The boy listened, though his chest tightened with fear. The forest echoed with faint voices as if repeating the tale. The shadows danced around like fragments of lost souls. The boy felt the truth clawing its way into his mind. The figure told him he was bound to the forest itself, that his life and its survival were connected forever. The boy shook his head, refusing to accept such fate. He said he was only a traveler, only a seeker of answers. The figure's silence was heavier than words could be. The boy fell to his knees, but his spirit refused to yield. He asked if there was any way to break this curse. The forest stirred as if waiting for the figure's reply. The figure finally spoke with a voice like thunder in silence. It said the curse could only be broken through sacrifice. The boy's body went cold as the words sank deep inside. He asked what kind of sacrifice would free him from this chain. The figure's hand of shadow reached closer to his chest. It whispered that he must give up what he loved most. The boy's mind spun as he thought of all he cherished. His family, his dreams, his very sense of freedom. Every possibility weighed on him like mountains of stone. The forest grew darker as if feeding on his despair. The lantern flickered brighter as though it felt his struggle. The boy whispered that he would not abandon love. The figure's shape shifted with disappointment and anger. The trees groaned as if they too shared the wrath. The boy stood shaking but unbroken in his decision. The figure's eyes flared like burning coals within the mist. Its voice sharpened and roared through the silent woods. It asked the boy if he would face death instead of sacrifice. The boy's lips trembled, but he nodded without hesitation. The forest shook as though struck by unseen storms. Branches cracked and leaves scattered like frightened birds. The boy clutched the lantern, holding it high above him. The light flared stronger, pushing back the creeping shadows. The figure stepped closer with every ounce of menace. The air turned colder until frost formed on fallen leaves. The boy's breath clouded thick with fear, yet with defiance. He shouted that he would never surrender his heart. The echo of his voice cut through the endless night. The figure paused as if stunned by his courage. The forest went utterly still, waiting for the outcome. The figure slowly lowered its shadowed hand of smoke. Its burning eyes softened into faint glimmers of sorrow. The boy blinked, unsure if he had won or merely delayed doom. The figure whispered that his spirit carried rare fire, that such defiance had not been seen in centuries. The forest groaned, but did not crush him with weight. The lantern burned brighter than it had since the journey began. The boy felt warmth return into his trembling hands. The figure said the curse could bend under such fire, but only if the boy accepted his bond with the forest. The boy asked what that bond truly meant for his life. The figure told him he would become both guardian and prisoner, forever tied to protect the forest's endless secrets. The boy's heart pounded between freedom and duty. The forest waited in silence for his answer. The boy's eyes darted across the ancient twisted trees. He thought of the suffering voices that cried in the dark. He remembered the pain carried in the figure's sorrow. His chest tightened as he weighed the burden ahead. The lantern glowed steady like a heartbeat, guiding him. The boy whispered that he would accept the bond. He said if his spirit carried fire, then it must have purpose. The figure bowed its shadowed head in silent approval. The forest exhaled a breath as if it had been holding one. The cries turned into whispers of peace for the first time. The boy felt his soul expand as energy flowed into him. The shadows pulled back, retreating into hidden places. The figure began to fade, but left one last warning. The boy was told that guardianship was eternal and lonely. The boy closed his eyes and accepted that fate with strength. The forest grew calm, like a storm finally settling its rage. Moonlight spilled gently through gaps in the heavy trees. The lantern now glowed with a golden fire of life itself. The boy's body no longer trembled, but stood steady and firm. He felt the forest's pulse beating with his own heart. The air smelled sweeter as flowers bloomed in silence. The voices faded into a chorus of gentle echoes. The figure vanished, leaving only a trail of mist. The boy whispered a vow to protect what he now belonged to. His steps grew lighter, though the path stretched endless ahead. The trees no longer clawed, but bent with quiet respect. The boy's spirit burned brighter than the darkness could swallow. He had walked into the unknown and returned transformed. The curse had turned into a crown of duty on his head. And the story of the boy in the forest had only begun. The forest grew darker with each step, but the boy kept moving with courage. The lantern in his hand flickered like a weak heart, yet it gave him hope. He could hear whispers around him, like invisible voices calling his name. Shadows stretched across the trees as if alive, watching his every move. The ground felt uneven, as if something beneath wanted to rise again. Every branch that cracked made him jump, but he refused to stop walking. The smell of damp earth mixed with something metallic in the air. His heart thumped like drums of war, but his spirit refused to break. Leaves fell slowly as if time itself had slowed inside that cursed place. The silence of the night was broken only by the sound of his footsteps. He gripped his small bag tightly, like it was the only shield he had. Cold wind brushed his face, carrying whispers of sorrow and pain. The boy looked around, searching for signs of life, but found none. Fear grew inside him, but determination was stronger than the fear. He knew destiny was pulling him deeper into the unknown path. The moonlight struggled to cut through the thick black clouds above. A strange glow appeared ahead, like a flame floating in the darkness. The boy walked closer, even though his instincts told him to turn back. The glow revealed an ancient temple, broken, yet standing with pride. Its stones were covered in moss, as if time had forgotten this place. Statues with cracked faces stood like silent guards of the secrets within. The entrance was wide open, like a mouth waiting to swallow anyone. Carvings on the walls seemed to move under the trembling lantern light. He stepped closer and felt the ground vibrate under his bare feet. An owl hooted from the distance, sending chills down his spine. The boy raised his lantern to see the symbols etched on the doorway. They told stories of battles, sacrifice, and eternal curses upon men. He touched the cold stone and felt a shiver crawl up his arm. The air grew heavier, as if the temple was breathing with him. Every step forward pulled him into the heart of the ancient mystery. The boy entered, and the silence inside was louder than thunder outside. Dust filled the air, making it hard to breathe as he took careful steps. Broken pillars stood like soldiers who had lost their last war in silence. Torches that had long been dead seemed to whisper of forgotten flames. The ground was littered with bones covered in shadows of the past. A strange humming sound echoed from the deepest chamber of the hall. His lantern barely lit the way, but curiosity pushed him forward. Every corner held darkness thicker than night itself, waiting quietly. The sound of water dripping made him realize he was not alone here. He could see faint scratches on the walls like someone had tried to escape. A giant cracked statue stood at the center with hollow eyes staring at him. Its arms stretched out as if warning him to turn back before it was too late. The boy's heart raced, but he clenched his fist, refusing to show weakness. He whispered to himself that fear would not decide his fate tonight. Then he walked toward the chamber, where the humming grew stronger. The chamber opened wide with walls painted in blood-red colors. Symbols of ancient power covered every inch of stone like warnings. A circle carved deep into the floor glowed with dim silver light. Inside the circle lay an old book chained as if to contain its power. The humming came from the chains rattling, as if alive and restless. The boy stepped closer, feeling a force pulling him toward the book. His lantern flame bent unnaturally, as if bowing to the cursed object. He knelt down and reached out his hand to touch the cold metal chains. Suddenly a voice whispered inside his mind, asking who dares disturb. The boy froze, but his determination kept him from running away. He answered silently that he was searching for the truth and the end. The chains rattled louder, filling the chamber with ghostly sound. Shadows on the walls began to twist, forming shapes of lost souls. The air turned icy, and his breath came out like smoke of winter. The boy prepared himself, knowing he had awakened something eternal. The book shook violently, as if trying to break free from the circle. The chains glowed red, then black, then vanished into thin air suddenly. The book opened on its own pages, flipping like a storm of whispers. Every word written inside glowed with golden fire, burning his eyes. The boy tried to read, but the letters changed shape every second. The voice returned deeper, stronger, echoing like thunder inside him. It said, "The truth is heavy, child, and it will crush the weak." The boy's heart raced, but he kept looking at the burning letters. Suddenly, he saw visions of people suffering across time and space. Kings losing their crowns, warriors losing their blood, lovers crying. The pain of humanity poured into his eyes like a river of sorrow. He fell to his knees, holding his head, screaming without sound. The book spoke again, saying, "Knowledge is a curse when carried alone." Tears rolled down his face as he begged for strength to continue. The chamber shook like an earthquake as destiny tested his soul. Flames erupted around the circle, rising without burning the stone. The boy stood inside the fire untouched, as if chosen by fate itself. The book floated into the air, glowing brighter than the moon outside. Shadows bowed to the light like servants of an ancient forgotten king. The voice turned softer, now almost gentle, yet heavy with command. It told him that sacrifice was the only key to open the path forward. The boy clenched his fists and swore he would not turn away now. Suddenly the flames turned blue and wrapped around his small body. He felt pain, but also a strange warmth like power filling his veins. Visions of battles flashed, showing him fighting creatures of darkness. His soul trembled, but courage lifted him like wings of invisible fire. The temple walls cracked under the weight of the power awakening. Dust and stones fell, but the boy stood unmoved in the glowing circle. The book closed itself and dropped gently into his trembling hands. Now he carried the burden of secrets that could save or destroy all. As he walked out of the chamber, the temple seemed alive behind him. The statues turned their heads, slowly watching him leave in silence. The walls whispered his name as though they knew his chosen role. Cold wind rushed through the hall, making torches ignite by themselves. Bones on the ground shifted as if honoring the boy's silent courage. Every step echoed louder than thunder as he moved toward the exit. The lantern light no longer flickered, it now burned steady and strong. Outside, the moon had returned, shining silver across the ruined temple. The boy looked back once and saw the entrance glowing faintly blue. It felt like the temple was sealing itself, waiting for his return again. He held the book tightly close to his chest, feeling its heartbeat. The forest around him had grown even darker than before. Yet he no longer felt fear, because fire burned within his spirit. The whispers of shadows followed him, but could not touch him now. He walked forward into the endless night, guided only by his destiny. The boy traveled across valleys and rivers, carrying the heavy book. Everywhere he went, people could feel a strange aura around him. Animals bowed their heads as if they sensed the power he carried. Children followed him with curious eyes, but adults feared his presence. Stories spread across villages about the boy of fire and shadows. Some called him a chosen savior, while others called him cursed. He walked alone, knowing both love and hate followed his steps. The book whispered at night, filling his dreams with visions of war. He saw armies of darkness marching against kingdoms of the living. He saw heroes fall one by one as shadows swallowed the world. Yet every vision ended with his face standing in the final battle. The boy questioned why fate had chosen him of all people. But deep down he knew answers would come only at the right time. He carried on with silent strength across the lonely paths. His journey was just beginning, and the world waited for him. One night, he reached a village burning under the attack of shadows. Creatures made of smoke and fire tore through homes and families. Screams filled the air as people ran for their lives in terror. The boy ran into the flames without hesitation, holding the book. He opened it, and the golden letters glowed brighter than the fire. A blast of light shot out, pushing the creatures back with force. The villagers stopped running and stared at the boy in disbelief. The shadows screamed as the light burned their dark forms away. Children cried with relief as the boy shielded them with power. Old men fell to their knees, calling him a warrior of destiny. The book whispered louder, guiding him how to control the light. He raised his hand, and flames of pure gold wrapped around him. The darkness retreated slowly, fading into the night sky. The boy stood among the ruins, breathing heavily with pain. But hope had been born in the hearts of the people that night. The village gathered around him, calling him savior of the flames. They offered him food, water, and shelter, but he refused to stay. The boy said the battle was only beginning, and he must keep walking. The villagers wept, yet blessed him with prayers for strength ahead. Children touched his hand, saying they would never forget his courage. Old women gave him charms, hoping to protect him in the dark nights. The boy smiled softly, though his eyes carried heavy sadness within. He knew every village might suffer if he failed to end this curse. The road stretched long and lonely, but he would not abandon it. The book whispered quietly, promising both pain and victory to him. He walked away from the smoke, leaving hope behind in the ruins. The villagers lit lanterns for him, praying they guide his journey. The boy's shadow stretched long across the ground like a warrior. Above the sky, thunder rolled as if the heavens were watching him. The story of the boy had just begun, and destiny followed his steps. The silence in the forest was heavy like a blanket that pressed against their chests, making every step feel like a weight they could not throw away. Evelyn held the lantern high, her hand trembling, but she refused to let fear break her determination to find the truth that had been hiding for generations. Behind her, the others followed, their breath shaky, yet their eyes locked on the path that seemed to twist in unnatural ways, as if guiding them toward a secret. Whispers grew louder, echoing between the crooked trees, a melody of voices that were both welcoming and threatening in the same haunting rhythm. Nathan felt sweat dripping down his neck, though the night was cold. He muttered under his breath, trying to convince himself that they were not alone but safe. The ground beneath them crunched with dry leaves, yet every sound they made seemed swallowed by the dark silence waiting around them. A shape moved between the trees, a blur of shadow, with no face but eyes that glowed like embers, watching them without blinking. Evelyn gripped the book in her hand tighter, the one that started this journey, and whispered to herself that the answers had to be close now. The lantern flickered as if the flame feared what lay ahead, and the shadows stretched into monstrous forms that clawed at their courage. A scream rang in the distance. so sharp and filled with despair that everyone froze in place, unsure if it came from human lips or something else entirely. Jacob finally whispered that they needed to turn back, but his words sounded empty, even to himself, because none of them could deny their fate was bound here. The forest seemed to breathe with them, its branches swaying though there was no wind, and its heartbeat thudded in rhythm with their own racing hearts. Evelyn spoke with a voice both broken and strong, telling them that if they stopped now, the curse would never end and the darkness would consume them forever. Her words sparked a fragile flame of resolve. In the others, they nodded, though their fear was still burning in their veins. With trembling steps, they moved forward, the screams still echoing in their ears like a warning, but also like a call they could not refuse. The deeper they walked, the colder the air became, as though the forest itself was draining every ounce of warmth from their bodies to feed its endless hunger. Their breaths turned to mist hanging in the lantern, glow curling into shapes that almost resembled faces, whispering words none of them could understand. A tree in front of them stood taller than the rest, its bark twisted into the shapes of screaming mouths, frozen in eternal agony and horror. Evelyn stepped closer, unable to stop herself. As if drawn by invisible chains, her eyes locked on the patterns carved into the wood. The mouths moved faintly, shifting as though trying to speak, and Nathan grabbed her arm, begging her to stay away, but her curiosity had already pulled her near. The moment she touched the tree, her vision shattered into fragments, a flood of memories from people long dead pouring into her skull. She saw villages burning, she saw children crying, she saw shadows wrapping around screaming men, dragging them into the darkness. The tree was a vessel of pain, a monument to everything the curse had devoured, and Evelyn realized with terror that every soul lost here still lived within it. Her scream echoed through the forest, breaking the silence. The others rushed to pull her away, their hands shaking as if her touch had infected them too. The mouths on the bark opened wider, their voices rising into a shrill chorus that made blood run cold and bones vibrate with unbearable fear. Suddenly, the lantern flickered violently, as though the forest wanted to swallow their only light and plunge them into eternal blindness. Jacob dropped to his knees, clutching his head, crying that he could hear his own mother's voice among the whispers, begging him to join her. The forest mocked them with familiar tones, twisting the voices of their loved ones into a cruel symphony that lured them deeper into madness. Evelyn held her head, tears streaming down, but through the torment, she whispered that the only way out was to face the heart of the curse itself. The tree groaned, its bark cracking as if alive and watching them, waiting to see if they would dare continue or fall apart. Like countless souls before, with their resolve hanging by threads, they forced themselves to walk again, their bodies weak, but their will tied to the hope of survival. The path shifted under their feet, no longer soil, but something softer like flesh, and it pulsed faintly, as if the ground itself had veins running beneath them. Each step made them feel as though they were walking on a living creature that lay beneath the surface, watching them from below. Nathan whispered that the ground was breathing, and his words sent shivers through the group, but none of them dared stop for fear of being consumed. The lantern light revealed faces faintly imprinted in the ground, mouths wide open in silent screams, eyes staring upward, begging for release. Evelyn's stomach twisted, but she forced herself to keep walking because she knew that stopping meant joining the endless mass of souls beneath them. A foul smell rose from the earth, a mixture of decay and blood, and it clung to their lungs, choking them with every breath they dared take. Jacob gagged, falling to his knees, but Evelyn and Nathan pulled him forward, desperate to not let him linger too long on the living path. Every heartbeat felt synchronized with the throbbing ground, as if something beneath was tethering itself to them, connecting to their bodies and minds. Whispers slipped into their ears, once more, now louder, clearer, promising release if they simply surrendered and let the ground claim them. Evelyn bit her lip, hard, tasting blood, just to remind herself she was still alive and not already part of this nightmare. The lantern flared suddenly, throwing their shadows long and twisted across the grotesque path, making them look like monsters marching to their own doom. Behind them, the faces in the earth shifted slightly, as if they were turning to watch the group. disappear deeper into the cursed forest. The weight of unseen eyes bore down on them, every step reminding them that escape was no longer an option, only confrontation remained. Evelyn whispered that the curse would not let them go, that they had crossed a line, and were now trapped until the truth was uncovered, though fear screamed at them to turn back their legs, carried them onward into the choking blackness because hope and terror had become the same. The air grew thicker as if the forest had decided to suffocate them, slowly pulling their lungs tight with every step. The lantern flickered violently, casting shadows that danced like demons along the twisted trees and broken roots. Evelyn led the way, gripping the book that seemed to hum with power, guiding her through the nightmare. Nathan stumbled over a root that rose like a spine from the ground and cursed under his breath, but the forest answered with a whisper of laughter. Jacob followed closely, trying not to look down at the soft earth that pulsed with hidden life beneath their feet. Branches scraped their faces and arms, like fingernails on stone in the cold wind. Whispered secrets meant to unsettle the mind. In the distance, a faint light shimmered, golden almost like hope, but it flickered in and out, teasing them relentlessly. The whispers grew louder, mixing with the moans of unseen creatures echoing from every shadowed corner. Evelyn held her head high, telling herself they were not alone in spirit, that the book had chosen them for a reason. Every step forward felt heavier, as though the forest itself was a living entity, testing the limits of their courage. A sudden shriek cut through the air, sending birds flying from the trees and leaves, swirling around in a chaotic dance. The ground beneath them shook, lightly warning of something waking from slumber, hidden beneath centuries of decay. The golden light ahead pulsed with warmth and danger, and their hearts pounded in rhythm with its silent beat. Evelyn whispered that whatever awaited them could either end the curse or consume everything they held dear. They pressed forward, knowing turning back was no longer an option. Destiny had tied their fates to this path. The golden light became stronger, forming a circle that hovered above the ground, illuminating everything around them. Symbols of power floated in the air, shimmering like fireflies holding messages from another time and dimension. The forest fell silent, as if even the shadows were holding their breath, waiting for the moment to unfold. Evelyn stepped into the light, feeling her body warm, yet a strange pressure pressing into her mind. Nathan followed reluctantly, his eyes wide with fear and awe as the symbols rearranged themselves, revealing ancient instructions. Jacob clutched his head, whispering that he could feel voices speaking directly into his thoughts. The book vibrated in Evelyn's hands as if approving the passage and warning of the trials ahead. From the center of the light, a figure slowly emerged, translucent yet radiating authority and power. It looked at them without eyes, yet the feeling of being understood and judged overwhelmed their senses. The figure spoke in tones felt more than heard, echoing inside their minds and souls. Simultaneously, it told them that only the worthy could carry the knowledge and wield the power to defeat the darkness. The forest seemed to lean closer, trying to eavesdrop on the conversation, and every leaf twitched with anticipation. Evelyn took a deep breath, promising to carry the burden of the book no matter the cost. Nathan nodded, though his hands shook, knowing they were standing on the threshold of something eternal. Jacob whispered prayers he hadn't spoken in years as the light pulsed and beckoned them forward without mercy. They stepped closer to the hovering light, feeling the warmth spreading through their bones and hearts simultaneously. The forest around them seemed to pulse with energy, as if alive and celebrating the courage of the three souls. The figure's voice filled their minds with visions of battles unseen and enemies that could not be touched by ordinary weapons. Evelyn saw herself wielding flames that bent reality, and Nathan imagined shields of silver light forming around them. Jacob saw visions of pathways opening and collapsing, leading to endless possibilities of victory and failure. The light formed into a doorway, shimmering golden and silver, as if time itself was bending to show them the way. The forest whispered in unison, urging them to take the step that would change everything forever. Fear tried to crawl into their hearts, threatening to paralyze them, but the power of destiny forced their legs forward. Every inch closer felt heavier, as if the air itself was thick with the weight of expectations and unspoken prophecies. The book glowed brighter, now humming, a melody that filled the air with courage and warning simultaneously. They could feel the presence of countless spirits watching, guiding, and testing their resolve from beyond the mortal veil. Evelyn whispered that once they stepped through, nothing would ever be the same again. Nathan swallowed hard, feeling the weight of history pressing against his chest and spine. Like invisible hands, Jacob gripped Evelyn's shoulder, silently pledging to face whatever came. Together in unity and courage. With one final look at the forest behind them, they stepped into the golden doorway, leaving fear and doubt behind. The moment they crossed the threshold, reality twisted around them, into shapes and colors they could not name. The air felt electric, pulsing with magic and forgotten energy older than the oldest mountains in the world. They landed softly on ground that glowed beneath their feet, almost like walking on molten silver frozen in time. Above them, stars shone brighter than they had ever seen, and the sky pulsed with shades of purple and gold. Evelyn felt a pull in her chest, as if the book was speaking directly to her soul, guiding her next move. Nathan looked around, awestruck, trying to make sense of physics and reason. Yet nothing applied in this realm. Jacob whispered that he had never imagined such beauty and terror could exist at the same time. Shadows lingered at the edges of vision, like predators waiting patiently, but unable to touch them. A river flowed through the land, reflecting impossible colors and moving, like liquid light, twisting and bending endlessly. The trio walked forward cautiously, the book floating beside Evelyn, humming with quiet power and warning. Every step felt sacred, as if the ground remembered the steps of heroes from forgotten eras. A voice that was both feminine and ancient called to them, echoing from every corner of the impossible landscape. The voice said trials awaited those who dared the path of destiny, and only the pure of heart could succeed. Evelyn whispered back silently, promising to endure whatever came to save the worlds connected to their journey. Nathan and Jacob nodded silently, knowing there was no turning back. No escape, no choice but forward. They entered a cavern glowing with crystals that hummed in resonance with the book, and their hearts alike. The walls were alive with images of history, battles, sacrifices, victories, and losses etched in light like memories. The floor beneath them seemed solid, yet shifting like sand under unseen tides of power. Evelyn held the book tightly, its glow illuminating the cavern, revealing paths twisting like serpents into the distance. Nathan stepped carefully, following her lead, his hand brushing against walls that pulsed like veins of living stone. Jacob's eyes widened as whispers filled his mind, giving glimpses of things long lost and places never seen. The trio walked slowly, each step echoing in the vast cavern, creating harmony with the ancient crystal resonance. Shadows crawled along the walls, reaching but never touching, as if testing patience and courage. The book vibrated stronger, now sending pulses through Evelyn, as if it was alive and breathing with her. A low hum became a melody that filled the space, guiding them toward the trials of truth and endurance. They reached a fork where 3 glowing paths stretched forward, each marked with a symbol of unknown power. Evelyn understood instinctively that the choice would shape not only their journey but the fate of countless lives. Nathan and Jacob waited silently, knowing she must choose the path, yet knowing choice itself carried consequence. The crystal cavern hummed louder, awaiting the decision that would determine whether hope or doom followed them. Evelyn stepped forward, her hand raised, and the path of gold light opened, welcoming them into destiny's embrace. The path twisted through skies and clouds of glowing mist that shimmered in impossible colors and patterns. Below them they could see shadows of kingdoms burning and forests alive with creatures of darkness fleeing the light. The book floated beside Evelyn, glowing brighter with every step, as if celebrating courage and warning of the trials ahead. Nathan held his breath, feeling every heartbeat align with the rhythm of the floating path beneath them. Jacob whispered prayers again, feeling the weight of unknown forces pressing on their minds and spirits. The wind was cold, but it carried whispers of wisdom from souls who had walked similar paths long ago. The light around them pulsed with an intelligence that was both nurturing and terrifying at the same time. Every step forward, the scenery shifted, teaching Lessons encourage patience and the understanding of sacrifice. Evelyn felt a warmth in her chest spreading, like fire through her limbs, giving her strength to continue. They passed mirrors of water that reflected not faces, but possible futures, filled with joy, sorrow, and choice. The trio held hands, silently drawing courage from one another as the path bent toward challenges unseen. The book spoke inside, Evelyn's mind giving guidance with a tone of quiet authority and protective vigilance. A shadow crossed the path ahead, a warning that not everything in this realm could be defeated by courage alone. The mist whispered that only unity and heart could overcome the trials to come. Evelyn tightened her grip and whispered to her friends that together they would face whatever awaited. The final stretch of the glowing path led them to a plateau, overlooking a realm of light and darkness intertwined. The air shimmered with energy and power so old it felt like eternity had been condensed into this very moment. Below them, vast armies of shadows gathered ready to consume what little light existed in this realm. Evelyn raised the book higher, feeling it respond to her determination, like a living ally in their quest. Nathan drew his sword. Though ordinary, it hummed with energy, drawn from the book and their courage. Jacob prepared his staff, ready to channel the power flowing through the path and the crystal cavern they had passed. The wind carried whispers of encouragement from souls lost and heroes remembered across time. The light from the path expanded, forming a protective dome around them, shielding from the approaching darkness. Evelyn whispered that this was the moment. They had been preparing for, their courage tested, their hearts laid bare. The shadows surged forward, yet the dome held strong, reflecting the power of unity and hope. Back at the attackers, the book vibrated violently, filling Evelyn with visions of victory and the terrible cost of failure. Nathan and Jacob stood firm, drawing strength from each other and the unspoken bond forged in the trials. The plateau trembled with the energy of the confrontation, yet they remained steadfast, unwilling to turn back. The realm below seemed to pause, as if the universe itself awaited the outcome of this final confrontation. The trio stood ready, and together they stepped forward into the battle that would decide destiny itself. The shadows surged toward them, like a river of darkness, hungry for every spark of light in the realm. Evelyn raised the book higher, feeling it pulse with protective energy, like a heartbeat syncing with her own. Nathan swung his sword, carving arcs of silver through the advancing shadows, illuminating fragments of terror. Jacob chanted words from the book, summoning barriers of light that shimmered like mirrors, reflecting courage. The ground beneath them trembled as darkness and light collided with a force that shook the very air around them. Whispers from the spirits of past heroes filled their minds, giving strength to hold the line without faltering. Evelyn felt fear claw at her chest, yet she drew power from the book and the unity of her friends. Lightning of pure energy crackled along the edges of the plateau, igniting the sky with ephemeral fire. The shadows shrieked in a language that made bones ache and hearts race, threatening to overwhelm. Nathan and Jacob moved in perfect unison, guided by instinct, courage, and the book's quiet authority. Every strike they made seemed to ripple through the realm, challenging the darkness with unyielding resolve. Evelyn stepped forward, releasing a pulse of light that expanded outward, swallowing dozens of shadows at once. The wind howled with approval, carrying the voices of the fallen, urging them to continue and never retreat. The plateau itself seemed to shimmer with anticipation, ready to bear witness to the outcome of this final clash. Together they stood, unbroken and determined, knowing that victory depended on their courage and unity. The shadows regrouped, forming shapes that twisted and writhed like living nightmares from forgotten realms. Evelyn's hands glowed with power as she opened the book wider, allowing the words to pour forth energy. Nathan's sword became a beacon, slicing through tendrils of darkness while illuminating the path ahead. Jacob's staff hummed, vibrating with life, sending beams of protective light across the battlefield. The trio moved in perfect harmony, their every motion choreographed by determination and desperate courage. The shadows hissed and shrieked, their forms constantly changing, yet unable to penetrate the dome of light. Whispers of ancient knowledge and guidance filled their minds, reminding them of the trials they had overcome. Evelyn focused on a single phrase from the book, feeling it resonate through her very soul and body. The golden light expanded, forming a radiant wave that pushed the shadows back inch by inch. Nathan called out, guiding the movement, ensuring no one was left vulnerable to the encroaching darkness. Jacob whispered to the group, reminding them that unity and heart were the ultimate weapons against fear. The shadows recoiled from the brilliance of the combined energy like wolves retreating from fire. Evelyn felt tears of relief mix with sweat as she realized the book had chosen them for a purpose. The path ahead shimmered golden, showing the final stage of their journey and the reward of courage. With a deep breath, they pressed onward together, ready to face the ultimate confrontation of destiny. A colossal shadow emerged at the center, towering above all others, radiating malice and ancient power. Evelyn's hands trembled, yet the book guided her fingers, writing words of binding and hope simultaneously. Nathan's sword glowed brighter than ever, channeling pure energy drawn from the resolve of the group. Jacob raised his staff high, directing beams of light into the heart of the darkness, pulsating like a heartbeat. The ground quaked beneath the massive shadow as it roared with a sound that could split mountains. Whispers of fallen heroes rang in their ears, urging them to stand firm against impossible odds. Evelyn stepped forward, calling upon the power within the book, summoning light and courage alike. The shadow lunged with speed and fury, striking at everything in its path, and the plateau trembled. Nathan and Jacob met it head-on, their combined energy creating a force field of resilience and hope. The sky shimmered with color unseen by mortal eyes, warning of the balance of light and dark at stake. Every strike from the trio made the shadow falter, yet it was relentless and cunning beyond imagination. Evelyn whispered words of command, feeling the book respond like a living ally, bending reality. Jacob chanted protective spells, weaving patterns of power that strengthened the trio's energy field. Nathan shouted a battle cry that echoed across the realm, inspiring courage and pushing back fear. The shadow hesitated for the first time, sensing the unity and heart of those who would not yield. The trio advanced together, using every skill and spell learned through trials across the mystical realm. The shadow lashed out with claws of darkness that could pierce through stone and steel alike. Evelyn focused intently on the book, channeling pure light into a concentrated beam aimed at the core. Nathan slashed relentlessly, cutting through the shadow's limbs and creating openings for the others. Jacob wove patterns of protection around them, shielding from every strike and guiding the energy flow. The air crackled with power, thundered with force, and vibrated with ancient and forgotten magic. Each pulse of light caused the shadow to scream, a sound that rattled the very foundations of reality. Evelyn's eyes glowed with determination, refusing to succumb to exhaustion or fear that clawed at her. Nathan's voice rang out clear and strong, rallying courage and reminding them of the reason they fought. Jacob's chants created harmony, with the book producing waves of energy that drove the darkness backward. The shadow grew, enraged, twisting and contorting, trying to escape the power of unity and hope. Evelyn whispered commands into the book, her words binding the shadow with threads of light. Nathan charged forward, striking the heart of the darkness with unyielding precision and energy. Jacob released a final wave of power, channeling all that remained of their courage and spirit. The shadow recoiled, screaming, as the plateau shone with the brilliance of victory in the making. A blinding light erupted from the trio, consuming the darkness that had ruled this realm for centuries. The shadow dissolved into mist, scattering like smoke carried away by a strong and cleansing wind. Evelyn lowered the book, feeling its warmth fade, yet sensing it had fulfilled its purpose fully. Nathan collapsed on one knee, exhausted yet exhilarated, knowing they had won against impossible odds. Jacob exhaled deeply, watching the last remnants of darkness evaporate into nothingness completely. The sky above shifted into serene hues of gold, purple, and silver, signaling balance restored. The spirits of fallen heroes appeared in soft light surrounding them, applauding courage and unity. Evelyn felt tears stream freely, her heart finally lighter, knowing the burden had been faced. Nathan smiled shakily, realizing that they had changed forever, through trials and triumph alike. Jacob knelt, giving thanks silently for guidance and strength that had carried them through darkness. The plateau pulsed gently like a heartbeat, now calm, steady, and alive with the magic of restoration. The book floated softly before Evelyn, glowing faintly as if ready to rest until needed again. Around them, the realm shimmered with life and possibility, showing new paths and unexplored journeys. The trio stood together, feeling the unity and courage of their bond stronger than any magic they had faced. They knew this victory was not only theirs, but belonged to every soul that had struggled before them. The forest beyond the plateau seemed alive in a peaceful glow that welcomed their tired bodies and minds. Evelyn opened the book one last time, feeling gratitude and awe at the journey they had survived. Nathan walked to the edge, looking at the horizon, where light and shadow merged in perfect balance. Jacob followed his gaze, noting how everything seemed sharper, brighter, and filled with endless potential. The whispers of ancient voices, now gentle, filled the air, telling stories of courage and hope. The trio knew their names would be remembered in the echoes of this realm for generations to come. Evelyn closed the book softly, sensing it would guide others when darkness returned eventually. Nathan reached out his hand to Jacob and Evelyn, knowing unity had carried them through every trial. Jacob nodded silently, feeling the weight of history and triumph settle comfortably in his chest. The path behind them faded into shimmering light, almost like a dream dissolving with dawn. Every leaf glowed, faintly reminding them that life continued even after the darkest night. The wind carried sense of renewal and promise, encouraging them to step forward without fear. Evelyn smiled, realizing that the courage of three hearts had changed the course of destiny. Nathan and Jacob laughed softly, their voices blending with the wind in a melody of freedom. Together they walked into the horizon, leaving shadows behind and carrying the light within. As they descended the glowing plateau, the ground beneath felt soft, welcoming, and alive beneath their feet. The sky reflected in rivers that now sparkled like liquid crystal, showing endless possibilities of tomorrow. Evelyn felt the book hum faintly, reminding her that knowledge and courage were eternal companions. Nathan felt energy flow through him, stronger than ever before, as if the trials had awakened something. Jacob noticed how every plant, every stone, seemed to radiate harmony and connection with life itself. They walked slowly, savoring the moment, knowing this peace was hard-earned and deeply deserved. The whispers of the spirits faded into gentle hums, like lullabies that comforted their hearts. Evelyn held the book close, promising to protect its secrets and the power it carried responsibly. Nathan and Jacob exchanged glances, filled with understanding and unspoken gratitude for the journey. The realm around them seemed to breathe in time with their own hearts, feeling the unity of life. The golden path behind them disappeared, leaving only lessons learned, courage forged, and bonds strengthened. They approached a valley filled with light rivers and trees glowing in magical brilliance that welcomed them. Every breath felt lighter, every heartbeat freer, as the world seemed to celebrate their victory silently. Evelyn whispered softly to herself that this was only the beginning of a story that would inspire forever. Nathan nodded in agreement, and Jacob smiled, knowing the journey had ended, but hope would never fade. At the edge of the valley, they stopped to look back at the path that had brought them here, alive and changed. The sky shimmered with colors impossible to name, reflecting courage, pain, hope, and triumph intertwined. Evelyn opened the book one last time, feeling it pulse gently with pride and quiet satisfaction. Nathan exhaled deeply, knowing that everything they had endured had shaped them into heroes of legend. Jacob looked at his friends, seeing strength, determination, and compassion shining in their eyes. The valley ahead promised adventure, mystery, and peace waiting for those brave enough to step forward. The book floated gently before Evelyn, as if bowing to their courage and guiding presence. The forest beyond shimmered faintly, showing the spirits of those lost at rest, now finally free. Evelyn whispered a promise to remember every lesson, every fear, and every. The sun dipped low, painting the valley in colors of fire and gold, welcoming the end of a long journey. Evelyn closed the book, slowly feeling its warmth linger, as if thanking her for the courage shown. Nathan looked at the horizon, seeing endless possibilities and the freedom they had fought so hard for. Jacob breathed in deeply, feeling the wind carry whispers of guidance and encouragement for their future. Every tree, every leaf seemed to bow gently, acknowledging the trials they had overcome together. The river sparkled, like liquid glass reflecting the bravery, friendship, and unity of the trio. Evelyn held the book, closed knowing it would always be a reminder of light over darkness and hope. Nathan smiled softly, understanding that the shadows faced would never define their spirit again. Jacob nodded, feeling the bond they shared stronger than any magic or challenge they had faced. The animals in the valley watched silently as if sensing the peace and harmony restored by courage. Evelyn stepped forward, feeling the earth solid and welcoming beneath her tired yet steady feet. Nathan and Jacob followed, knowing that together they could face whatever paths awaited beyond. The horizon glowed with promise, showing mountains, valleys, forests, and rivers yet to explore fully. The whispers of past heroes faded into serenity, leaving only lessons learned and hearts emboldened. Together they walked onward, knowing their journey had ended, but their legacy would live forever. As night fell, stars sparkled like diamonds above, guiding them with silent encouragement and light. Evelyn opened the book one last time, feeling it pulse gently as if to say the story was complete. Nathan looked at his friends and smiled, knowing they had not only survived, but grown stronger together. Jacob felt a sense of peace wash over him, understanding that darkness could never conquer true courage. The valley glowed softly under the moon, showing every shadow dissipated, replaced by hope and serenity. Evelyn whispered a quiet thank you to the spirits, the book, and every challenge that had shaped them. Nathan raised his sword briefly in a salute to all they had endured and all they had learned. Jacob lifted his staff, feeling energy flow freely, without fear, without burden, just pure potential. The wind carried faint laughter and whispers of joy, celebrating the victory of heart and unity. Every step they took felt lighter, freer, as if the world itself applauded their courage and persistence. Evelyn closed the book, gently feeling it settle into rest, knowing it had fulfilled its purpose fully. Nathan and Jacob walked beside her, ready to face a new dawn with wisdom, strength, and hope. The stars twinkled brighter, as if reflecting the bond and courage that would never fade or falter. The trio disappeared into the glowing horizon, leaving the valley peaceful, alive, and forever changed. And so the story ends, a tale of courage, friendship, and triumph that would inspire all who hear it.